Hey friends, guess who's going to CrimeCon UK? CrimeCon, the world's #1 true crime event, is coming back to London from Saturday the 10th to Sunday the 12th of June 2023. Get inside the mind of serial killers and psychopaths, learn from leading criminologists, hear from the families and survivors, meet your favorite true crime podcasters, immerse yourself in forensic evidence, and delve deeper into unsolved crimes. CrimeCon is the ultimate true crime weekend partnered by CBS Reality, the expert-led true crime TV channel. I will be there, so come and join me. Use quote consequence for a special 10% discount. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit crimecon.co.uk and use code consequence to save 10%. If you love true crime, then you need to go. There's going to be content creators with more than 30 of your favorite podcasters, including me. True crime YouTubers, there'll be a live recording studio with audiences. Join me at CrimeCon UK. Go to crimecon.co.uk and use code consequence to save 10% off on your tickets. I can't wait to see you there.
The world of 911 emergency dispatching is brutally diverse. 1 minute you can be talking with someone about parking violations.
What's the process we are to take to have people towed? Because it's actually delaying the mail.
And then all hell can break loose. Then the rest of the day is crazy. We could have murders.
Hill County 911, what's your emergency?
I just killed my children.
Home invasions.
He's in my house. I shot him.
You shot him?
He was coming up towards me and I shot him.
Natural disasters.
Tornadoes next to the goddess. I'm buried under a box to roll my head.
Even bombings. My show, Music City 911, will put you in the dispatcher's chair, put you ear to ear with the callers and responders, and keep you on edge from start to finish. I hope to both educate and entertain, as I'm a 911 dispatcher with over 20 years experience. And just like dispatching, every episode is different from the last. Music City 911. Real 911 calls, real 911 dispatchers. Available to listen to on any podcast app.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to True Consequences. I'm your host, Eric Carter-Landin, and today we're starting off a very special mini-series on the murder of Father Reynaldo Rivera. This case has been unsolved for decades, and we are taking a deep dive to dispel some of the myths and hopefully clear up some of the confusion around the mysterious murder of Father Rivera. I want to send a special thank you to Jackie Moranti, who has researched, written, and produced this series. It is my hope that by telling this story and clearing up some of the confusion, maybe somebody would come forward with information that would lead to the arrest of those responsible for the murder of Father Rivera. If you'd like to support this show, go to patreon.com/trueconsequences or ko-fi.com/trueconsequences. Let's get into it. Father Reynaldo John Rivera answered the phone at St. Francis Cathedral one night to hear a man on the other end asking him to meet him at a rest stop so he could perform last rites on the man's grandfather who had suffered a heart attack. Father Rivera went to perform the sacrament and was found in the desert, shot to death 2 days later. The murder has remained unsolved for 40 years. I'm Eric Carter-Landin, and this is True Consequences. Father Reynaldo John Rivera was born on October 29, 1924 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Though we don't know much about his childhood, we do know about his career as a priest. Very few children know exactly what they want to be when they grow up. But John Rivera always wanted to be a priest, ever since he was a young boy. Particularly, he wanted to be a Franciscan priest. I'm going to talk about the history of the Franciscans for a minute because it's a history that is ingrained in who Father Reynaldo was and the way he lived. He chose the Franciscan order because its foundations are deeply rooted in helping the less fortunate, healing the sick, and ministering to communities. The origins of the Franciscan order date back to 1210. It was founded by St. Francis of Assisi during the medieval period in Europe. During this time in history, everyone was very afraid of lepers. They were the, quote, unclean, and they were cast out of society. They were marked with sin. Francis didn't see them any differently than the rest of the community. He loathed them, but he knew that if he wanted to be a man of God, he had to accept them and minister to them, just like he would minister to anyone else. He went into the leper colonies and began to preach. He then began touching them, and finally, he kissed their wounds. This was a time of great spiritual growth for Francis. He faced his fear and he ministered to the sick. When Francis was about 24, he was sitting in church, and he heard the crucifix speak to him. It told him to go to the outskirts of Assisi where he would find an old abandoned church. His mission was to rebuild the church. Francis began begging in the streets for money and stones to rebuild the church. His father, Pietro Bernardoni, was embarrassed by Francis's behavior. The family was not poor and had no reason to beg anyone for anything. Many of the townspeople thought that Francis had lost his mind. He became a laughingstock, and this brought shame on the family. Francis's father became even more angry when he found out that Francis had stolen some of the family's cloth to sell so that he could have money to repair the church. During a heated argument between Francis and his father demanded the money back from the cloth that Francis had sold. This argument was public. It happened in the town square. Francis took all his clothes off and stood naked in the square. He told his father, "You can have whatever money is left and you can have my clothing." That's when Francis announced that he wanted nothing more to do with Pietro Bernardoni. He left his family behind and devoted himself to the repair of small churches. Then, in 1208, he found himself in another church. The priest was reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Christ was telling his followers that they should go forth and proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is upon them, and that they should take no money with them when they go to announce this message, that they should take no walking stick for the road, and they should not wear shoes. Francis took this message to heart and chose this life for himself. He dressed in worn clothing and became a traveling preacher. Over the year, Francis of Assisi gained a small band of followers. He called them fratres minores, or little brothers. The term friars is derived from the Latin term fratres, which means brothers. Francis led his small group to Rome, where he requested and obtained a meeting with the Pope. During this meeting, he asked for permission to found a new religious order. The Pope approved the request, and in 1210, the Franciscan order received papal recognition. Francis passed away in 1226 and was canonized as a saint on July 16, 1228, by Pope Gregory IX. The Franciscans believe in the importance of charity, benevolence, and selflessness. They do not believe in living lavishly while others live in poverty. The founding principles of Franciscanism include believing that God exists as a community of love through the Trinity, God is generous and loving, and that we are all brothers and sisters in God's image. In 1934, John Rivera was 13 years old, and he professed his faith in God. He was sent away from home to attend seminary schools. He graduated from high school in 1939 from St. Francis Seminary in Cincinnati, Ohio. Then he went on to college at Duns Scotus College in Southfield, Michigan. He moved from there to the Holy Family Theology School in Oldenburg, Indiana. He was ordained a Franciscan priest in 1953. That was when he came home to New Mexico and stayed until his death in 1982. He was devoted to his home state. He and Father Miguel Baca were the first priests ever to be born in Santa Fe. Both were Franciscans. Both had gone to seminary schools in Ohio, and this was where they met and became friends. They would remain friends over the decades that they served the people of New Mexico. It's important to understand the path to priesthood. Father Reynaldo spent 19 years between seminary schools and his ordination. Those who choose to become Franciscans climb several steps in their spiritual journey before they reach the ongoing formation, or the final step of a lifetime of servitude. After attaining a bachelor's degree in theology and philosophy, those who profess their faith begin their path to priesthood. The initial stage of the Franciscan formation is called postulancy. This is a time when the aspirant considers the Franciscan life. This stage consists of an orientation to Franciscan life and prayer and offers opportunities for ministry. Postulants are given resources to help them develop the psychological and emotional qualities necessary for ministry. This step lasts about 9 months. The second step is called novitiate. The program lasts a year and is centered around the beginner or novice considering his calling to the religious life. It is during this time that the novitiate studies the Franciscan rule and general constitutions, and he learns the vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. This is also the stage where he is given his Franciscan garment called a habit. The garment consists of a brown tunic and a hood called a capuche. The white cord that serves as a belt will normally have 3 knots in it. These knots symbolize the 3 vows: chastity, poverty, and obedience. However, at this stage, the belt will have no knots in it since the novitate hasn't taken his vows yet. During the third step, called post-novitate, the novitate becomes a friar. He takes his vows and receives the 3 knots in his belt. These vows will be taken yearly until the friar is prepared to make his lifelong profession to God. The period lasts anywhere from 3 to 9 years. During this time, he is integrated into the life of the Order of Friars Minor. Often you'll see letters OFM after a Franciscan priest's name. OFM stands for Orders of Friars Minor. He learns ministerial and professional values based on his needs, gifts, and calling. He will receive theological training, occupational training, and technical training as well. He can study in the fields of nursing or social work. After this training is complete, the friar petitions to the provincial minister to be received into solemn vows. He publicly professes his vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience for the rest of his life. This marks the beginning of full lifelong membership into the Order of Friars Minor. Formation is the last step. This is a friar's lifelong commitment through living the Word. These men continue to nurture future friars and strive to give a good example of an ever-growing gospel life. This is where the friar shows his dedication in everyday life and ministers to his community while forming a deeper bond with God. Father Reynaldo never stopped growing in faith. His passion and piousness would follow him from the time that he professed his faith in 1934 to the time that he was named a guardian in 1976, and beyond to his death in 1982. It's not unusual for priests to move from one church to another. This is part of their ongoing formation and growth in the church. Father Reynaldo was dedicated to every congregation he ministered to. He learned to grow as a man of God while guiding his flock. This included ministering to other priests as servants of Paraclete in Jemez. Father Reynaldo ministered at Parkview from 1953 to 1956. Then he went to St. John's in Roswell from 1956 to 1957. From 1958 to 1959, he was ministering at Sacred Heart in Farmington. He spent 2 years at St. Francis in Gallup from 1958 to 1960. Then he went to the Jemez Pueblo where he ministered from 1960 to 1962. He was in Blanco from 1963 to 1967. Then he was at Guadalupe in Clovis from 1967 to 1975. He finally went home to Santa Fe and St. Francis Cathedral, where he remained from 1975 to 1982. Every time priests moved to new communities, it was documented in the newspaper. Often, there would be comments from community members stating that they were sad to see Father Reynaldo leave their community, and giving a few details about all he had done while he was there. Father Reynaldo was lucky enough to spend his entire career in the state that he loved, the state that he bonded with, and the state that he called home. His roots were in New Mexico, and Santa Fe in particular. He could be close to the family and community he loved so dearly. Father Reynaldo's life was well documented in newspapers from 1956 to his death in 1982. He officiated weddings and funerals, baptized babies, ministered to the sick, performed last rites, and it seems that every family would publicly thank him through small editorials in the newspaper over the years. He officiated masses for his family members as well. On June 12th, Father Reynaldo sang the nuptial mass at his niece's wedding. On April 25th, 1971, he performed the mass at his nephew's wedding. Both were beautiful double ring ceremonies. Family came in from all over the country to watch both couples marry. He was a guest speaker at Fiesta Reminensis in 1968. He joined the Vespers at the Cathedral and the candlelight procession along the route to the Cross of the Martyrs on Fort Marcy Hill. The fiesta was a huge event with reenactments of conquistadores, huge religious celebrations, and the finale of the burning of Zozobra, or Old Man Gloom. The fiesta began in 1914 as a way to cleanse the hearts of the people and bring joy to their lives. The first Zozobra was burned in a vacant lot in downtown Santa Fe. The finale was preceded by the candlelight procession and the Vespers. Several pastors from different churches would speak during the weekend. Now, the marionette of Zozobra stands close to 50 feet tall, and he's stuffed with papers of gloom. Divorce papers, tax papers, maybe a warrant or two. The streets are lined with artists selling their wares, and though there are religious celebrations happening over the weekend, they're mostly attended by those who are members of the church. Father Reynaldo would get into some political controversy over the years. During his time as a priest, people looked to the opinions of religious leaders. This meant that talking about current events and giving an opinion on them was part of ministering to the people. He was a voice in New Mexico when Roe v. Wade was brought before the Supreme Court in 1973, and locally, he stood up against liquor sales on Archdiocese property in July of 1981, just a year before his death. The Archdiocese stood firmly against bars and restaurants that had opened on the property having liquor licenses, and Father Reynaldo led the charge with several well-crafted letters to the city proclaiming the displeasure of the Archdiocese and St. Francis. In the end, the city won out, and bars and restaurants were allowed to serve at least beer and wine in their establishments. Father Reynaldo wouldn't give up, though. He and the other members of the Archdiocese threatened to veto the bill. They could do this since this was an Archdiocese property and the businesses were leasing space from them. They again lost, and the bill passed. The city voted 6-1 in favor, and the veto failed. In October of 1981, Father Reynaldo was interviewed in the Santa Fe New Mexican about his thoughts on intercultural marriage. Interracial marriage was not accepted at the time. Most people married within their culture, and couples who wed outside of their race or culture were often shunned. Father Reynaldo did not accept this idea and encouraged intercultural couples to grow together and ignore the prejudice that they may face. He spoke about the acceptance that New Mexico couples enjoyed when it came to interracial and interreligious marriages. He stressed that both partners should be accepting of the other's culture and beliefs, and that would get them through any prejudice that they encountered. He had seen that firsthand in his own family. His brother married a woman who was white, and his family was Hispanic. Despite the cultural differences, the marriage thrived. The couple raised a family in Santa Fe, and Father Reynaldo was an integral part of that family. He ministered to the couple, gave them the advice that they needed to become stronger through adversity. His sister-in-law would speak about his bond with her children, and her husband. She would mourn his passing years after his death. Not everything that he talked about would be controversial or political, and his actions showed that he didn't have any prejudice. He offered whatever he could to his community, not just the Catholics, but his whole community. In 1975, the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which is still in existence today, wanted to offer karate classes, and Father Reynaldo offered the banquet hall at Guadalupe Church so they could do it. Father Reynaldo wanted the kids in Clovis to have a safe and productive place to go as much as the NAACP did. The year before, he offered the church's school bus as transportation for the elderly to a picnic. Quite a few of the people attending the picnic were in nursing homes or could no longer drive. In March of 1982, he judged the St. Francis School pageant. 12 girls competed in the pageant, and it was up to Father Reynaldo to choose one of them. He did so with words of encouragement and positivity for those who didn't place in the contest, and words of praise for the girl who won. In the last article about him before his death, he was officiating Mass at the Easter celebration in Santa Fe. He also helped children find Easter eggs and participated in other festivities. The pictures of the event show Father Rivera on the grounds of St. Francis. He's surrounded by children and adults alike. He's got a broad smile on his face. This was April of 1982. It seems that whenever I read a community news article about him at any function, he was surrounded by people and smiling. He looked to be in his element. He wasn't basking in the attention, but he seemed to be enjoying the moment, speaking with people in his community, smiling with them, laughing at their jokes, and ministering without preaching. He was approachable, friendly, kind, and selfless. His nature is reflected in the news reports, the way his brothers in the church spoke about him, and the way his family remembered him. He was named as a guardian of the friary in 1976 and was called one of Santa Fe's favorite sons by Brother Bruce Michalik, one of his Franciscan brothers in faith. Brother Michalik was very close to Father Reynaldo, and he mourns his death to this day. His sister Nikki would say that he was the most important source of spiritual guidance for his family. She passed away in 2018, and it was her mission to keep his name alive in hopes that his murder would be solved one day. Helen Rivera, Father Reynaldo's sister-in-law, said people just flocked to him. He was a very gentle man, a very pious man. Helen's daughter was born with a serious disability. The child was frail and delicate. Father Reynaldo was there. He held the child gently in his arms.
And I remember just him holding her, looking at her. Didn't say much or anything. He just held her.
Father Reynaldo was dedicated to his work and his flock. Ministering to the people would be the last thing he would do before his death on August 5th, 1982. He led a beautiful life full of celebration and faith. His career spanned 3 decades through it all, and he was known to be one of the truly faithful. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, New Mexico.